Welcome back. I'm glad you enjoyed the previous deep dive into the darker corners of Reddit. I want to say before I begin, this video, while more varied than the first, is significantly more unsettling. As usual, the video will start out lighter, and as it continues, there will be more and more unsettling posts. If you like this series, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Now, without further ado, let's once again enter the Reddit abyss. Number 1. The mysterious post-it notes. Many years ago, a user posted the following into the legal advice subreddit. On the 15th of April, I found a yellow post-it note in handwriting that wasn't mine on my desk, reminding me of some errands I had to do, but told literally nobody about. While odd, I chalked it up to something I did in my sleep, thinking maybe in my half-awake state I had scrawled it, so it didn't appear to be my handwriting. I threw it out and thought little of it. On the 19th, I found another post-it note on the back of my desk chair, in the same handwriting as the previous note, telling me to make sure I'd saved my documents. I was freaked out, but there were no other signs of a break-in, so I set up a webcam in my house aimed at my desk and used the security camera app for it to record after detecting movement. On the 28th, I woke up to find another post-it note, this one saying, "Our landlord isn't letting me talk to you, but it's important we do." I immediately checked the webcam's folder on my computer and found nothing from the night before. But my computer's recycle bin had been emptied, which I'm certain that I didn't do recently, indicating that someone had noticed the webcam and deleted the files. They were just saved straight into a folder on my desktop called Webcam. Today, on the 1st of May, I found another post-it note, this time on the outside of my door, with nothing written on it. And there appeared to be post-its on many other doors in my apartment complex, all blank in varying colors. Do I have any legal recourse here? I have no proof except for the post-its, but those are written by my pen and on my post-it notes, so conceivably I could have faked them. Would contacting the police get me into any trouble? If they can't determine an outside source for this, I mean. I just want to make sure I'm not wasting anyone's time. Should I consult my landlord? Those also living in the complex? Edit. I pulled up a letter I received from my landlord back when I moved in, and the handwriting is identical. Could this count as evidence? A really strange post, right? No pun intended. Another user posted this in response. It's possible that your landlord is leaving notes inside your apartment, but they don't make any sense in the context you're describing them. It's likely that you're writing the notes yourself, but you're forgetting. Do you use post-it notes as reminders in any other parts of your life or job? Yes, this might be a mental health issue. You might be experiencing some sort of dissociative disorder. Or it might be a physical problem. You mentioned that you have a very unusual, narrow bedroom with no windows. Is there a chance that you're not getting enough ventilation when you sleep, or that there's a carbon monoxide leak in the building? A cheap CO detector, which you should have anyway, is a fast way to find out. You'll also have really bad headaches. You know your own medical and mental history and your other experiences. I think if these incidents might be you writing notes to yourself, there's no shame in getting somebody qualified to give you an opinion. The OP responds that they have indeed been suffering from headaches. Later on, they make a second thread which confirms that they've been suffering from CO2 poisoning. They've been leaving the notes themselves and forgetting they'd done it. The Reddit user who suggested that had saved OP's life. As I said in my last video, a lot of the time, Reddit is used for good things. The only thing I still find a little weird is why the handwriting apparently matched the landlord's. Number 2. Bizarre childhood story. This story, for as long as I've made YouTube videos, was the creepiest one I've ever read. In 2013, on Ask Reddit, a user asked, "What's a story you've heard that still gives you chills to this day?" One user responds, "I hope this doesn't get buried. I'm writing on a mobile device. Forgive my mistakes." My friend Jacob told me this about a month ago. Backstory for a little bit of context. Jacob's mother is a drug addict, and his father really didn't have much wrong with him, outside of being with his mother. One night, when Jacob and his father were asleep, they slept in the same room. They heard a series of loud banging, scratching, and moving noises coming from the mother's room. Jacob's father jumped out of bed and ran down the hall and started slamming on the door. His mother opened it, yelling at him to quiet down, and then he woke her up. He asked her about the sounds. She hadn't been awake to hear them. Jacob's dad would have assumed that she was on something again, but something was wrong. The window was open all the way, and the TV was moved across the room, still plugged in, and had the screen facing outside. Jacob's dad was reasonably scared. He shut the window, got his baseball bat, locked the mother's room from outside, and made her sleep in the living room. He stayed up most of the night. He woke Jacob up at 5 in the morning. It was still dark out. Jacob went out to the kitchen where his mother already was and ate some cereal. A couple minutes later, his dad walked into the room, wide-eyed. He pointed at Jacob and his mother and held his finger to his lips. They both quieted down. They heard something shuffling around on the roof, going from edge to edge. Jacob's dad had the bat, and they sat together in the room, quietly. Minutes later, the sound went away. Jacob's grandmother was called. She was asked if everybody could stay over there for a little while. And she said yes, and told them she'd come pick them up. Jacob finished eating and went to go sit on the couch. There was no television in that room, so he sat in silence. He looked over at a door to an empty room in the hallway. The door was open. There was a finger wrapped around the side of it. Jacob screamed and pointed to it, and his dad grabbed him and ran out. Jacob's mother followed behind. They went to a gas station and sat out front until they saw Jacob's grandmother's truck. Jacob described how unnatural the finger looked to me. He said it reminded him a little bit of a foam finger in length and width. It was wrapped clear around the door frame, and the door itself being latched onto the opposite side. They didn't go back to that house much after that, and once they'd gotten everything out of it, they never went back again. Nothing was stolen, and the window in the empty room was always open. Number 3. AFH 43. If you only looked at the first posts of Reddit user AFH43, you wouldn't see anything out of the ordinary. He would post things like, people with the Gosha X Reebok Phase 1 shoes, are they the same size as the normal Reebok Phase 1s or bigger? And he would ask people for their favorite brand of hoodies to help him find something new to buy. He was apparently interested in streetwear and also EDM music production. So going by this, he would seem to be a completely normal Reddit user. Things take a turn, however, when one day he posts, Epicurus on death. I can only find what he says about death in his letter to Menocius. Where else did he write about death? To the philosophy subreddit. The original text of this post outside the title is lost now, but it was pretty out of place given the original types of posts he was making. After this post, he goes back to posting about seemingly normal topics, mostly about music production after this point, before going back to posting about death, with a post on Today I Learned saying, Today I learned that JFK, Aldous Huxley, and C.S. Lewis all died on the same day, November 22nd, 1963. It seems like he was beginning to have more and more thoughts about death, and his posts completely shift away from what he was originally preoccupied with. He begins posting more and more dark and strange things, such as up to 272 dead in South Sudan, mortars and RPGs fired near UN compound, and what are some parallels between Zande witchcraft and witchcraft in medieval Europe? After several more posts, he makes a post in the Ask Philosophy subreddit titled, The theory of quantum immortality has driven me to a state of pure anxiety and terror over the last week. Is it true? And has it been debunked? I can't do this anymore. He begins talking with users in the subreddit and becomes obsessed with the idea of quantum immortality. To explain, essentially what quantum immortality is it's the idea that if you die in one universe, you immediately shift to another. So theoretically, you can't actually die. If you attempt to end your own life, for example, you would automatically shift to another universe where you survived, even though you died here. So therefore, you wouldn't actually be able to die. One user replies to his post and says, Quantum immortality just means that you will never wake up dead. Think about it. The only state you will ever observe yourself to be in is alive. That's only one of the problems with it. Another is that death is not an instantaneous quantum transition. It's a slow, messy process by which the collection of atoms that you are currently pleased to call me become so disorganized as to be unable to call themselves anything, and then begin to stink. You will likely be there for much of the process, and know what's happening. Don't worry. You're in no danger of being forced to live forever against your will. At this point, every single post AFH43 makes is about quantum immortality, such as, the theory of quantum immortality has driven me to a really dark place. I'm living in a state of pure terror. Is there a reason not to believe it's true? I'm scared of quantum immortality. Please help me. Why don't you believe in it? The possibility of quantum immortality is making my life unbearable. Is it a credible theory? It makes complete sense to me, and I can't believe I'm the only one losing my mind over it. Apparently, for some reason, AFH43 became terrified of the idea of having to live forever and being unable to die. He would continue to post about quantum immortality until his last post titled, Quantum Immortality. I'm killing myself soon. It's too much. I can't do it anymore. After that, AFH43 didn't post anything at all. And that's where the story ends. Except, it isn't. On September 12, 2019 at 11:42 p.m., AFH43 returned with a post titled, While recovering from a psychotic breakdown and attempt at taking my own life, I, 22M, met the only girl, 22F, I've ever fallen in love with. Due to my state, it didn't work out. I'm considering asking her out again. I am AFH43, a regular feature on those dark and creepy Reddit history threads. I'm still alive. The post reads as follows. It's been a long time since I've logged into this account. I thought it had been long forgotten by everyone. However, after logging in a few days ago, I saw that my inbox was full of hundreds of messages from people asking how I am or whether I'm even alive. I also saw that my username had been mentioned in a lot of dark, creepy Reddit history Ask Reddit posts. These were extremely hard for me to read because I try not to think about that time in my life. Nearly 3 years ago, I woke up one morning and my mind simply broke. I believed that because of quantum immortality, I would never be able to die, and therefore would experience all of the greatest sufferings possible, over and over again, for all eternity. I felt like there was no escape. It was like a panic attack of the highest intensity that didn't end for weeks. For the first time, I understood what Emil Choron meant when he said, "We dread the future, only when we are not sure we can kill ourselves when we want to." Surviving an attempt at taking my own life only worsened my delusions. It was only once I started on antipsychotic medication during my stay in a psych ward that I began to put the pieces of my life back together and return to normality. It was during the process of getting back on my feet that I met a girl whom I completely fell for. We went on a few dates. We even kissed, but because of what I was going through, I was so nervous around her that it made things a bit awkward, and I was very much emotionally closed up. I think I just tried too hard to make something happen. I just wasn't ready. I was still recovering from a truly traumatic and horrific experience that had completely shattered my mind. I only really started to become myself, to come out of my shell, after we stopped seeing each other and I began my first relationship with another girl. My girlfriend was a pretty incredible person, and over the last year with her I learned to enjoy life and to become free and uninhibited by anxieties. I became open. I became comfortable with myself and who I was and with the constraints of my existence. I made peace with my experience with my delusions. Today, I'm happy and in control of my life, truly. That relationship ended a few months ago. I have been on dates with other people since then, but still, I feel like this person who I kissed all those years ago is the one. I never stopped thinking about her, even during my last relationship, especially when things went bad. I can't help but wonder if we had met now for the first time, what would have happened between us? Even though I haven't spoken to her in well over a year, I just still felt this overwhelming sense of unfulfilled possibilities with her. I wonder if I'd still even be nervous around her at all. I don't know. I feel so different now, but still, I don't have that answer. I was considering sending her a message on Facebook, asking if she wanted to go out again sometime, just to see if anything has changed or if it could work. I'm not sure how to word it or if I should even do it. I don't know what to tell her. After experiencing some personal family losses over the last year, I've realized that life is fleeting and I don't have much to lose. So how can I approach this in a way that's not totally cringeworthy? After that, there was radio silence until the 7th of January 2022. But this message was a decidedly darker one, which said, "Unfortunately, I'm still here. For a few years now, my life has been pretty good, but at the moment I'm having an unrelated breakdown and I'm in the hospital for other mental reasons. I wish I could take my own life, but I'm still too scared. Maybe it's worth facing it, though. I'll have to face death eventually. I'm stuck in hell, and my life is screwed. I might turn to drugs to have some relief from this relentless pain. I just need to sleep and never wake up. Maybe that can be my reality. I just can't do this. I feel alone. I'm terrified and numb at the same time. The default state of my life is suffering. If anyone can help dissuade me from quantum immortality, please tell me. But please don't make it worse for me. I'm in agony. Nothingness is a beautiful thing. I just want out. I know it'll transfer the pain to other people, and that makes me feel horrible. I wish I didn't have these beliefs. If I didn't, I wouldn't be here right now. Since my last post, I've been diagnosed with OCD, and that explains a lot. I've been given Seroquel today to help me start thinking rationally. This may sound stupid, but the situation has to do with heartbreak and very specific and absurd triggering factors related to it. Maybe that sounds stupid, but I found love. Real love. And now, it might be over. Life is suffering. I am suffering. I don't want to be here anymore. I wish this was physical pain instead. I really envy Emil Turin. Suicide was a wonderful fantasy to him at times, because at any moment he knew he could escape, and that gave him immense comfort. My mind is broken, and I don't think I'll ever be able to fix it. It seems like he was going through a lot of dark things, and OCD most definitely can cause people to attach significance to things that don't actually have significance, such as avoiding going outside in certain weather, otherwise you become convinced you'll get cancer, or having to flip a light switch 19 times, 4 times in a row, or else you'll die. It's a debilitating disorder. Anyway, I'm just glad that AFH-43 is still around, and hopefully they'll be able to get better and overcome the things that are causing them stress. Number 4. Self-surgery. This entry made me physically ill to research. Have you ever heard of the medical doctor Leonid Rogozov? Well, back in the day, and I mean way back in the day, as in USSR in the early 1960s, he was having some problems. See, Mr. Rogozov was in the Antarctic on an expedition. He developed appendicitis and wouldn't be able to get help in time to save his life. So, what did he do? Well, he cut it out himself. And that's right. Nobody else was able to do it, so he performed surgery on himself successfully and saved his own life. Now imagine you're a Redditor and you think, hey, I want to do that too, but I want to perform self-surgery for cosmetic reasons. What reasons, you might ask? Well, this user felt that their cheeks were too chubby, and they couldn't properly fit a motorcycle helmet on their head. Yes, this actually happened. The user said the following. Oof, I don't know what I've just done. I guess a bit of backstory is good. I'm taking my motorcycle license and I love it, but the helmets are uncomfortable for me. I have chubby cheeks, so they push on them and give me blisters inside my mouth. I thought, hey, why don't I just make my cheeks slimmer? There's this procedure called buccal fat removal where they cut out a fat pad in your cheeks. I looked for clinics that would do this in my hometown, Estonia, as things are usually cheap in Eastern Europe. I found a clinic and they offered the procedure for 1,290 euros. I'm a poor student and don't have that kind of money. I watched YouTube videos of the procedure carried out by doctors, and they all said that it was an easy, simple, and fast procedure. So I thought, hey, why not save that money and do it myself? I started collecting materials. A hobby knife from my basement. I don't have any clue whose it was, as it's a shared basement. Ethanol disinfectant, tweezers, anesthetic spray stuff that you use for deep throat. As much as I love pain, I doubted whether I could handle cutting open my cheek and pulling out a fat pad without some numbing, and I ordered an actual mini suture kit from Amazon that had stitches, a needle, an actual medical scalpel, and medical tweezers, but my card kept declining, so I gave up on that. So fast forward 2 weeks. I moved country for uni and I was in my own room. I finally had everything set. I spent 2 hours in the morning trying to reach the fat on one cheek, but I kept almost fainting, so I gave up. I had a hangover, so maybe that had something to do with it. I was pissed because I couldn't find the stupid fat pad. I guess I just didn't cut deep enough past the muscle. Either way, in the evening I tried again. Instead, I used the scissors on my tiny Swiss Army knife to cut and didn't use the hobby knife. The anesthetic kept wearing off, so it wasn't pain-free, but I eventually reached the fat. Within the first hour, I came to the conclusion that there was nothing easy, simple, or fast about it. And that shit was hard. The blood kept on covering what I was trying to see, so I'd just see red inside my mouth instead of the actual fat tissue. Pulling it out was a different matter entirely. It was an insanely weird sensation, like pulling a tooth but in your cheek. I cut the fat but hit a vein, so hence the blood on my chin afterwards. Either way, I'm sitting here writing this with someone else's frozen dinner held to my face after just cutting it out. It took 3 hours in all for just one fat pad because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But hey, practice makes perfect. Didn't even need any stitches. The next day the user posts, "My cheek is swollen a shit ton, but that's to be expected. I saved the fat pad and decided to put it on my sandwich I had for breakfast with a little bit of pepper because, hey, I don't waste good food. It tasted a bit like the fatty part on a pork cutlet." They posted pictures to verify this. I'm not going to link those because, like I said, this entry made me physically ill to research. Do you understand why? Either way, I hope that the user can put their motorcycle helmet on now. I don't know. Number 5. Porta Potty Story. In an Ask Reddit post asking users, "What is the most disgusting thing you've ever done?" user to Crypt Keeper had this to say. Apologies in advance for this being long. We have a big outdoor music festival here every year that's in a large park downtown. They also shut down the streets around it as well as use the civic center right by the park. When I was 17, we went like my girlfriend and I, did every year. Well, it was the last day of the event and it was coming to an end on Sunday night. As we were sitting in front of the stage for one of the last acts, I get the ever so dreadful churning and gargling in my stomach that I always know is going to end in diarrhea. The porta potties are about a football field away, and they always had long lines, so I decided to tough it out since I was going to head home soon anyway. It progressed further, to the point that I'm starting to sweat and getting sharp pains as we begin packing up and walking out. I have to walk about 4 blocks over to a parking garage where I and her family are parked. So we get there, I'm clenching trying to hold it together, and she's doing the usual drawn-out teenage goodbye, which feels like it takes eternity. Finally, she leaves and I head up to the middle deck, about 3 floors up. They were on the bottom, to my car. As I walk toward my car, she calls my phone and informs me that she has my keys still, and to come back down and get them. At this point, it's rapidly progressed to the point that I'm penguin walking around this parking garage about to lose the good fight. I get back down and get my keys. She draws out the "I love you, I'll miss you, blah blah blah" again, and I'm about to just run away. She leaves and I think maybe I can get back in and just hold it till I get to the porta potty. No dice. Since the event was over, they wouldn't let anyone back in. I made it back to the garage, dripping buckets of sweat, having to stop every 10 feet or so to clench and wait for the temporary all clear. There's no public elevator in this garage, so I'm between floors in the stairwell when it's game time. Nothing could hold it back. It was as if someone kicked me in the stomach. I fling my pants and boxers off and the most horrible, chunky liquid spews out. There's so much of it that it starts running down the stairs, and all of a sudden I hear the door on the bottom floor, 2 flights of stairs below me, open. I quickly wipe my bottom with my boxers and throw my pants back on. As I'm entering my floor's door, I hear, "What the?" I hop in my car and drive off. Fast forward to the next day. We're sitting around watching TV and they run a news story about the event. Apparently, the doorway that I lost it at was also the floor that has the entrance to the mayor's office. They were looking for the vandals, and there may be a reward for any information. At this point, being 17, I'm freaking out wondering, what if the cameras saw me? What if they saw my car and start questioning people? What if they DNA test my shit? My girlfriend's utterly disgusted at the story and thinks people like that should be put down. A few days later, I get a call from the police department that I need to come down to the station. I'm of course freaking out. I immediately turn pale white according to my mom, and we make it down to the station and I'm on the verge of tears thinking that I'm about to be sent to jail. It turns out that they'd recovered my stolen car stereo that was taken from me a few months back, and it was unrelated and they just needed me to sign off on it. To this day, I've told no one of this story. Reddit. You're the first. Edit. Wow, this really caught traction. When I went to bed, this was at the bottom, and I figured that nobody would actually read it. To anyone doubting it, this story is very real, unfortunately. Afterwards, and to this day, I carry a small pack of baby wipes in my glove box and a dose of Imodium AD diarrhea medicine in my wallet. Number 6. Why I quit nursing school. This one is presented without comment. So, let's start. A super morbidly obese patient was brought in complaining of severe abdominal and vaginal pain and high fever. Doctor began palpating her abdomen and felt a mass in the lower right quadrant. She was too massive to fit in the ultrasound room, so they had to do everything there in the ER. The tech tried to do a regular ultrasound, but it wouldn't penetrate the 700 pounds, literally, of fat. So she decided she would have to do a transvaginal ultrasound. The doctor and about 30 nurses lift this woman onto a table and somehow get her into stirrups. And this was disgusting enough. The tech started moving the folds of her thighs and her panniculus out of the way, and one nursing student was on each side to hold the thigh flaps, and there was one to hold the stomach flap. I was the unlucky one charged with handing her tools. The doctor had left the room, of course, and he told us to just holler when we figured out what was going on. So we're yanking on this woman's fat rolls, and finally managed to start getting her you-know-what exposed. Oh my God. The smell. This is the most horrifying thing I've ever been exposed to before or since. And I've worked for a flower shop growing up. I've been to funeral homes. I've seen bodies in all states of decay. I've hunted, fished. My grandparents owned cattle, poultry, and pigs, and I've rubbed deer urine all over my face and would roll in cow feces before I went through this again. Her inner thighs and the opening of her vagina were weeping this blackish, brown, thick fluid. My classmates on either side of her promptly started gagging into their masks. The tech started screaming for me to run and get the peppermint oil. I dove across the theater for the bottle, ran back, and drenched all our masks in the oil. Once we could all breathe again, the tech told me to run for the doctor, that this was an emergency. Okay. I still had no idea what was going on. I can't see past the mountains of fat and the tech, but I do as I'm told. When I finally return with the doctor, My fellow nursing students were all huddled into the corner with the tech, who looked like she'd aged 20 years in the 10 minutes it took me to come back with the doctor. The doctor walked over and started asking the tech what the hell was going on. Keep in mind the woman is still in the background screeching about how she wants to get down and how she's hungry and when are we letting her go home. Somehow, somewhere, this woman had found a man desperate enough to bang her. The mass in her abdomen, it was the remnants of a placenta. Her body had started projecting the pregnancy, but because she was so overweight, she never knew she was pregnant and never realized she was miscarrying. The baby had begun rotting inside of her vaginal cavity, and the placenta was just floating detached in her uterus. They had to take her in for emergency surgery, scrape the remnants of the baby and the placenta out of her body, and put her on IV antibiotics. I know she spent at least a week in the hospital. Past that, I don't want to know, and pray I never find out. So, that's my horror story of why I wimped out of nursing school after just one day. Number 7. Jolly Ranchers. Let me take you back to 2009. Back then, I was either getting ready for or just starting high school. This is an older post, and if you remember last video, old Reddit was nothing like new Reddit. If you missed the last video, be sure to check it out, but to clarify, old Reddit was a much more demented place, honestly. It's actually kind of ridiculous how weird and edgy the place was back then. People had no filter when it came to what they posted there, and you know the atheist meme where the guy says, "In this moment I'm euphoric, not because of any phony God's blessings, but because I'm enlightened by my intelligence"? Well, that post wasn't a joke. That's actually how the place was back then. Anyway, I bring up the year 2009 because that's when someone on Ask Reddit posted this question. Reddit, what's the grossest or nastiest thing that's ever happened to you in a sexual encounter? The thread was full of what you'd expect. Mostly mundane, somewhat gross stuff, but nothing too over the top. Until one user chimed in. Nothing tops the Jolly Rancher story. Steve and his girlfriend Samantha went off to college in August. She went to Florida State. He went to Penn. So, she decides to fly to PA to visit him. He was really happy to see her, so he decided to give her some oral action. He'd done this numerous times before, and he always enjoyed doing it. But for some reason, this time she smelled really horrible and tasted even worse. He didn't want to offend her, though, because he hadn't seen her in months, so he put a Jolly Rancher in his mouth to cover it up, even though that didn't do too much to help. In the course of events, he accidentally pushed the candy inside of her and stuck a finger in to grab it out. He took it out and put it back into his mouth and bit it. Only, it wasn't the Jolly Rancher. It was a nodule of gonorrhea. As in, the blister-like structure that gonorrhea makes, filled with diseased pus, was the size of a Jolly Rancher, and the poor guy bit it. I guess it was really dark in the room or something. He freaked out and started vomiting all over the place when it exploded in his mouth. He demanded to know what was going on. Turns out she had cheated on him at a club, like the first week of college, and did it with some random guy. And the woman had no clue what was wrong with her. She did notice a strange smell, though. So now, Steve is freaking out that he has gonorrhea of the mouth, and God knows what else. Number 8. The Swamps of Dagobah. In yet another Ask Reddit post, this time asking, doctors and nurses, what has been your most gory, disgusting, or worst medical experience? A user posted this in response. OR nurse here. This is kind of a long one. I was taking call one night and woke up at 2 in the morning for a general surgery call. pretty vague, but at the time I lived in a town that had large populations of young military guys and avid meth users, so late-night emergencies were common. I got to the hospital where a few more details awaited me. Perirectal abscess. For the uninitiated, this means that somewhere in the immediate vicinity of the asshole, there was a pocket of pus that needed draining. Needless to say, our entire crew was less than thrilled. I went down to the emergency room to transport the patient, and the only thing the ER nurse said as she handed me the chart was, "Have fun with this one." Amongst healthcare professionals, vague statements like that are a bad sign. My patient was a 314-pound Native American woman who barely fit on the stretcher I was transporting her on. She was rolling frantically from side to side and moaning in pain, pulling at her clothes and muttering Hail Marys. I could barely get a name out of her after a few minutes of questioning, so after I confirmed her identity and what we were working on, I figured it was best to just get her to the anesthesiologist so we could knock her out and get this circus started. She continued her theatrics the entire 10-minute ride to the operating room, nearly falling off the surgical table as we were trying to put her under anesthetic. We see patients like this a lot, though. Chronic drug abusers who don't handle pain well and who've used so many drugs that even increased levels of pain medication don't work simply because of high tolerance levels. It should be noted, tonight's surgical team was not exactly wet behind the ears. I've been working in healthcare for several years already, mostly psych and medical settings. I've watched an 88-year-old man tear a 1-inch diameter catheter balloon out of his genitals while screaming, "You'll never make me talk." I've been attacked by an HIV-positive neo-Nazi. I've seen some shit. The other nurse had been in the OR as a trauma specialist for over 10 years, and the anesthesiologist had done residency at a level 1 trauma center, or, as we call them, knife and gun clubs. The surgeon was ex-Army, and averaged about 8 words and 2 facial expressions a week. None of us expected what was about to happen next. We got the lady off to sleep, put her in the stirrups, and I began washing off the rectal area. It was red and inflamed. A little bit of pus was seeping through, but it was all pretty standard. Her chart had noted that she'd been injecting IV drugs through her perineum, so this was obviously an infection from dirty needles or bad drugs, but overall it didn't seem to warrant her repeated cries of, "Oh Jesus, kill me now." The surgeon steps up with a scalpel, sinks just the tip in, and at that exact same moment, the patient had a muscle twitch in her diaphragm. And just like that, all hell broke loose. Unbeknownst to us, the infection had actually tunneled nearly a foot into her abdomen, creating a vast cavern of pus, rotten tissue, and fecal matter that had seeped outside her colon. This godforsaken mixture came rocketing out of that little incision like we were recreating the funeral scene from Jane Austen's Mafia. We all wear waterproof gowns, face masks, gloves, hats, the works, all of which were about as helpful as rain boots against a fire hose. The bed was in the middle of the room, an easy 7 feet from the nearest wall, but by the time we were done, I was still finding bits of rotten flesh pasted against the back wall. As the surgeon continued to advance his blade, the torrent just continued. The patient kept seizing against the ventilator, not uncommon in surgery, and with every muscle contraction, she shot more of this brackish, gray-brown fluid out onto the floor until, within minutes, it was seeping into the other nurse's shoes. I was nearly 12 feet away, jaw dropped open within my surgical mask, watching the second nurse dry heaving and the surgeon standing on tiptoes to keep this stuff from soaking his socks any further. The smell hit them first. Oh God, I just threw up in my mask. The other nurse was out. She tore off her mask and sprinted out of the room, shoulders still heaving. Then it hit me, mouth still wide open, not able to believe the volume of fluid this woman's body contained. It was like getting a great big bite of the despair and apathy that permeated this woman's life. I couldn't breathe. My lungs simply refused to pull any more of that stuff in. The anesthesiologist went down next, an ex-NCAA D1 tailback, his 6'2" frame shaking as he threw open the door in the OR suite in an attempt to get more air in, letting me glimpse the second nurse still throwing up in the sinks outside the door. Another geyser of pus splashed across the front of the surgeon. The YouTube clip of David at the dentist keeps playing in my head. Is this real life? In all operating rooms everywhere in the world, regardless of socialized or privatized, secular or religious, big or small, there's one thing that remains the same. Somewhere, there's a bottle of peppermint concentrate. Everyone in the department knows where it is. Everyone knows what it's for, and everyone prays to their gods. They never have to use it. In times like this, we rub it on the inside of our masks to keep the outside smells at bay long enough to finish the procedure and shower off. I sprinted to our central supply, ripping open the drawer where this vial of ambrosia was kept, and was greeted by an empty box. The bottle had been emptied and not replaced. Somewhere out there was a godless bastard who'd used the last of the peppermint oil and not replaced a single damn drop of it. To this day, if I figure out who it was, I'll kill them with my bare hands, but not before cramming their head up the colon of every last meth user I can find, just so we're even. I darted back into the room with the next best thing I could find, a vial of mastisol, which is an adhesive rub we use sometimes for bandaging. It's not as good as peppermint, but considering that over 1/3 of the floor was now thoroughly coated in what could easily be mistaken for a combination of bovine afterbirth and maple syrup, we were kind of out of options. I started rubbing as much of the mastisol as I could get on the inside of my mask, just glad to be smelling anything except whatever slimy demon spawn we just cut out of this woman. The anesthesiologist grabbed the vial next, dousing the front of his mask in it so he could stand next to his machines long enough to make sure this woman didn't die on the table. It wasn't until later that we realized that mastisol can give you a mild intoxication from huffing it like this, but in retrospect, that's probably what got us through. By this time, the smell had permeated out of our OR suite, and down the 40-foot hallway to the front desk where the other nurse still sat, eyes bloodshot and watery, and clenching her stomach desperately. Our suite looked like the underground river of ooze from Ghostbusters 2, except dirty. Oh, so dirty. I stepped back into the OR suite, not wanting to leave the surgeon by himself in case he genuinely needed help. It was like one of those overly artistic representations of a zombie apocalypse you see on fan forums. Here's this one guy in blue surgical garb, standing nearly ankle deep in lumps of dead tissue, fecal matter, and several liters of syrupy infection. He was performing surgery in the swamps of Dagobah. Except the swamps had just come out of this woman's ass. And there was no Yoda. He and I didn't say a word for the next 10 minutes as he scraped the inside of the abscess until all the dead tissue was out. The front of his gown a gruesome mixture of brown and red, his eyes squinted against the stinging vapors originating directly in front of him. I finished my required paperwork as quickly as I could, helped him stuff the recently vacated opening full of gauze, taped this woman's buttocks closed to hold the dressing for as long as possible, woke her up, and immediately shipped her off to the recovery ward. Until that point, I'd only heard of alcohol showers. Turns out that 70% isopropyl alcohol is about the only thing that can even touch a scent like that once it's soaked into your skin. It takes 4 or 5 bottles to get really clean, but it's worth it. It's probably the only scenario that I can honestly endorse drinking a little of it too. As we left the locker room, the surgeon and I looked at each other, and he said the only negative sentence I heard him utter in 2.5 years of working together. That was bad. The next morning, the entire department, a fairly large floor within the hospital, still smelled. The housekeepers told me later that it took them nearly an hour to suction up all the fluid and debris left behind. The OR suite itself was closed off and quarantined for 2 more days, just to let the smell finally clear out. I laugh now when I hear new recruits to healthcare talk about the worst thing they've seen. You ain't seen shit, kid. Number 9. Throwaway 963123. How well do you know the person you're married to? The person you're dating? User Throwaway 963123 had a particularly stomach-churning story to tell, which she posted to the confession subreddit in 2013. My husband's dirty secret turned out to be much dirtier than I could ever imagine. Obviously, using a throwaway account because, yeah. So over the past few months, I've noticed my husband sneaking out of the house at night, sometimes for hours at a time. I'm one of those people that fall asleep as soon as their head hits the pillow, so he obviously thinks I'm asleep. But one night, I heard the baby crying and noticed he wasn't there. At first, I thought he was sneaking out to see another woman, but it turns out that it was worse than that, in my opinion anyway. We had our first child in February of this year, and he's been a really hands-on father. Always is there to take care of the baby, despite having a full-time job when I need a break and all that. I don't know how else to really say what he's doing without it sounding completely insane, because it kind of is. But it turns out, when my husband goes out at night, all he does is go into the yard where the trash cans are, rummage around, and fish out dirty diapers from our child. And then he opens them and just stands there smelling them. It seems to only be the ones that our son has gone number 2 in, because I've seen him toss back ones that presumably only have been peed in and look for a dirtier one. And then he just stands there, taking this deep, contented breaths in of our child's excrement. For ages. The sad thing is, he looks so damn happy when he's doing it too. I've watched him from the window for weeks now, just standing out there sniffing with this huge grin on his face, and then rummaging around for another. The real icing on the cake was the other night when he came back to bed, once again thinking I was asleep. He must have got a bit too close to the diaper when he was sniffing our son's business, because when he got into bed with me I could smell something and open my eyes a bit, and I finally heard him snoring. It turns out he had a bit of poop on his nose. I felt disgusted. So I'm at a loss as to what I should do now. I love my husband, but this freaks the hell out of me. Has this happened to anyone else before? Is this a fetish or something? I'm too scared to confront him, but I know it needs to be done. And any advice would be great because, shit. Edit 1. I'm still awake right now feeding the baby and waiting to see if he'll make a move later on. Thinking about confronting him, but not sure if I will or not yet. Will update. Edit 2. Wow, I can't believe how many people have replied to this post. First of all, thank you for all the people who wrote in with such thoughtful advice. I can't reply to everyone, but I've read every comment on here, so thank you. I still haven't confronted my husband about what he's doing. And the other night after my update, after waiting an hour or two, sure enough he snuck out again for his nightly diaper sniff. I was planning on confronting him, but he ended up coming inside after smelling only 1 or 2. And by the time he came back into bed, I was too nervous and flustered to say anything, so I just pretended to be asleep. I've decided, though, that either tonight or whenever he goes outside next, he doesn't every night, but most nights he does, to take a photo of him in the act and be waiting for him with the evidence when he returns inside. I've never been good with words, and I'm just too nervous to sit down with him and bring it up. And someone suggested that I photograph or videotape him so he has no choice but to explain, since I obviously have evidence, and leave him no room to pass it off as me maybe seeing him doing something else. Hopefully I can get a clear enough picture that it'll be enough for him to realize there's no way out but to confront the issue. I'm nervous about how he's going to react, but I know he loves me and our family, and hopefully there's some way we can work through whatever this is together. Thanks again for all the supportive comments and advice. There's been an overwhelming support and only a few weird comments, and I really appreciate people reserving judgment of my family and I. I'll again update once I've confronted him, and hopefully I'll be able to wrap this up nicely and it'll be happy endings all around. She then posts an update. First of all, I'm really sorry that it's taken so long to update about this. I've just logged on now for the first time in weeks because things have been absolutely insane for me. I've been putting off coming on here and updating because I'm ashamed and upset, and things didn't go the way I'd hoped after confronting my husband. And it's all just been way too much for me to handle confronting myself, let alone confessing to all of you. But I understand I posted my confession on here for advice, was met with an overwhelming response, support, and understanding, and so it's only fair that I give you guys at least one update on the situation as it stands today. I hope you all understand that I don't want to go into too much detail with this. Firstly, to protect our identities, because regardless of what happens, I never did this to name and shame anyone. And secondly, because it's all too painful right now for me to sit down and write out every inch of hurt that's happened to me and my family over the past few weeks. I just don't have that emotional strength right now. Maybe in time I will, but right now, I just don't. So forgive me in advance if this is brief or I skim over details or dodge specifics. Basically, a few nights after I posted my last edit on the previous post, I gathered the courage to confront my husband. In hindsight, it might not have been the best way to do it, but at the time it seemed logical and the least confrontational way I could, with still providing proof for me and my husband to see. So that night I took some pictures with my iPhone and a short video at our bedroom window of my husband outside. It was blurry and hard to see, but was enough for him to understand that I knew what was going on. I waited for him on our bed with the evidence for a good 45 minutes before he came back upstairs. I expected him to be shocked and ask me what I was doing up, but he instead surprised me. He said something along the lines of, "Oh, did the baby wake you up? I was just downstairs eating some leftovers." He kissed me on the cheek. "Good night, then," and he tucked himself in and rolled over to sleep. I was dumbfounded at how quick he was to lie straight to my face. I guess when he came upstairs, I expected him to not be able to hold back from what he had been doing, or at least be worried about why I was awake, or the fact that I was awake. It made me so mad to see that he was prepared to lie to my face and pretend everything was fine when I'd been concerned and upset for weeks, and I just exploded. I marched around the bed and shoved the evidence in his face, yelling at him and asking what the hell he'd been doing for all this time and why. I demanded answers. The next few hours went by in a blur of yelling and arguing. His argument was basically that I didn't, couldn't, and would never understand why he did it, so why should he even bother telling me? My issue was the fact that I was trying really hard to be understanding of his nightly trash can visits, but instead I just got lied to by the one person in the world who's supposed to be honest to me. A lot more yelling, and I'm bawling at this stage, and ask between sobs if it's some sort of fetish thing for him, and he surprises me once more by going completely silent and just looking down at his feet. I explode once more, asking him how on earth he can find our baby's excrement like that in any way, to which he got angrier than I've ever seen him in my life and yelled at me, "See, this is exactly why I can't ever tell you." And he walked out of our front door and drove off. He's been staying at his brother's house since and hasn't been back to see our son. But frankly, if that's what he's into, I don't want him here. I thought I'd give us a few days to cool down before calling him, but he called the next day and said we needed to talk about getting a divorce. We tried to both have a calm conversation. I said to him, "Please, let's try and sort something out. counseling, anything. And all he said in reply was, "Can I see my son, though?" And I told him that honestly I didn't think it was a good idea at the time, considering the circumstances. He said okay and told me that he'd be getting a lawyer and that I probably should too. So right now we're doing it as civilly as we can through the legal system. But I doubt that he has anything against me considering I have evidence of sorts. My mother's come to stay with me in the family home to help out with the baby, and I don't have the courage to tell her what our divorce is about. I'm just too ashamed. All I've said is, it's bad. And I tried giving him the option to counseling, which he rejected, and that's that. I don't know what'll happen from here, but I thought at least that you guys should know the essence of it. Thanks again for all the support and understanding. I hope you don't judge me for the way I approached it. I know I could have done better, but what's done is done. And I need to just put my heartbreak aside and try moving forward for the sake of my son. Because he is, and always will be, the priority in my life. Number 10. The infamous Ask an Abuser thread. I don't normally use trigger warnings in my videos, but this thread was one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen on Reddit. So if you're sensitive to this topic, close the video now. So in the previous video I mentioned briefly that old school Reddit was nothing like Reddit today. I wasn't exaggerating. It's almost like two different websites. Now, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, Ask Reddit is a part of the site where, as the subreddit name indicates, you can ask users of Reddit whatever you want. Sometimes the threads go nowhere, sometimes they blow up and get thousands of replies. Well, what if I told you there was an Ask Reddit thread that was so toxic and just disgusting that it actually became dangerous and had to be manually wiped from the site? That's exactly what happened in 2012 when a user posted a thread on Ask Reddit titled, "Reddit's had a few threads about SA victims, but are there any Redditors from the other side of the story? What were your motivations? Do you regret it?" Let's go over a few posts from that thread. And these are hard to find now, but they shed some interesting light onto the mental processes of some of these people.
I am a post-college aged male who several girls through the use of coercion, alcohol, and other tactics over the course of 3 years. First off, I must say, I was at a dark and horrible place in my life that I've since grown from. I'm ashamed of the person I was. If the people I'm close to now knew who I was, I would be ruined. I'm known for being a great guy, friendly and easy to get along with, a community and political activist, a fervent volunteer in the community, and a person who rises through the ranks quickly due to successes at work. That was my mask, and I was good at it. So good that maybe I convinced myself along the line that that was who I really could be, and that may have helped me change and stop doing what I did. I'm somewhat remorseful for what I did to those girls, but I don't think I could face them to apologize. I know what I did was wrong, but I had this certain insatiable thirst that brought me to do what I did, and just when I thought I could stop, I'd find myself back on the hunt.
Okay, so first off, did you notice how he never actually mentioned the person he, essayed? He talked about how he was in a horrible place and is ashamed of who he was and worries about how people would think if they knew who he actually was, but he never actually apologized to the other person or seemed to care about that at all. Also, what is a post-college aged male? You could literally be 90 years old and be post-college. You could also be in your 90s and never gone to college at all. Also, note that he says he's somewhat remorseful for committing SA. Are you starting to see why this thread was so controversial? From a different user, we have this. My brother is serving time for an essay on his daughters. He was drinking a half-gallon plus of liquor a day, taking Vicodin, and was out of his mind when he did it. He got drunk and ended up doing some inappropriate things on more than one occasion. He didn't actually have intercourse with them, but just touch them. I can tell you firsthand, he has no remorse. He blames his ex-wife and his daughters for doing this to him. To put it lightly, the thread really was the most disgusting and dangerous thing to ever be posted on Reddit. You don't believe me? Well, here's what a user who was a confirmed psychiatrist had to say about the thread around the time it went live about 10 years ago. Hi all, I'm a psychiatrist. My main area of clinical work is emergency psychiatry, and my main research interest is functional brain imaging. I'd like to start a discussion about the SA thread, which I see as a serious danger. In a nutshell, SA is a crime which sometimes hinges directly on feelings of power over the victim. That power often loses its meaning if the victim is unconscious. Many assaulters typically need a victim who knows they're being victimized. This victim is the assaulter's audience. This is crucial. The audience gives the abuser pleasure, euphoric delight from unfettered witnessed suffering. That euphoria is intense and possibly driven by the same neurobiology involved in a drug high. Now, when Reddit invites assaulters to retell their stories, they offer an audience of thousands. The possibility that individuals reading these stories will be horrified afresh is very appealing to some of these assaulters. It's neurobiologically very much like anticipating drug use. Note, the audience doesn't actually need to be horrified. In the mind of the assaulter, the possibility of horrifying an audience is what is appealing. Ever wonder why addicts keep using? A major factor is the craving that comes from recalling the feelings associated with a pleasurable activity or drug. Cocaine addicts, active or in recovery, who are asked to think about using cocaine have measurable brain changes precisely when they report cravings. We haven't actually measured this in assaulters, but we suspect it's highly analogous. Thus, the Reddit assault forum is very possibly triggering assault cravings in these people. It's also teaching assaulters how to SA better via shared stories, the same way we teach new participants to improve in any field, by sharing our experiences. That's right, the Ask an Abuser thread gave them a platform to harm people again, to potentially cause them to want to commit SA again, and also to defend themselves and justify that kind of assault. According to a user on Reddit who was recalling the event, somehow the entire thread in a comment ended up on r shit Reddit says. The whole thread got to I'm going to hell for this. 7 of the comments got to best of. 4 comments got to men's rights. 3 got to no context. 1 each got to subreddit drama, My Little Pony Lounge, essaying women, feminism and Brotega, and a sub-thread somehow got to funny. And those are some of the ones I've found or been linked to. Outside of Reddit, judging by some of the messages and comments, B had a thread based on it. Female-angled journalism site Jezebel had an article. The Huffington Post picked it up, and the BBC used it as a starter for their article on Reddit. Some of these users seem like sociopaths, or maybe even psychopaths. Generally, I try to make things somewhat funny, even if it's a dark topic, but for this one it was difficult to do that, because it's just not funny. But, I guess until next time, which I have even worse posts from Reddit, let me know if you enjoyed this video, if you can. And, yeah, I'll see you guys next time. I really wasn't kidding when I said this is like the Reddit abyss, so hopefully I'll see you guys next time, and yeah.